This is the Steadfast Collective podcast. I'm your host, Austin Myers. Thank you so much for joining us. February 2nd, 2024, we are one day out from the Rocky Raccoon 100-mile ultramarathon. 1 year ago, this was a few days before my first 100-mile ultramarathon, and it was the same race. And here we are a year later, ready to do it again. In this podcast, I will dive into why we're back in Huntsville, Texas, and why we're running this same race again, because there is a reason behind that decision. And we're going to get into a lot of other things that have really been on my mind a lot over the last few weeks of training, over the last few weeks of life, and hopefully can leave you with some takeaways in following the journey that's going to unfold tomorrow in Huntsville, running 100 miles, and give some insight into the purpose, why we're doing it, why we're here, a little bit, that you don't see in the training, and really the things that fuel the training to be able to show up to the start line of a big race like this confident and ready to go. So we're here. We're a day out. We're confident. We feel all the right kinds of nerves that we're supposed to feel. And ultimately you come to these moments and you just feel extremely grateful because it was never guaranteed to be here, and yet we are. And we're ready to make some really cool things happen tomorrow on the race course, as we're now, looks like about 11 hours out from the start line. So let's get into it. Let's discuss really the most important things that I want to share for this race, starting off with the thing that's weighed most heavily on my mind over the last few weeks of training. And it's that this race will mean nothing if I don't make it mean something. I knew coming into this race that I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to serve a larger purpose. I didn't know what that would be, and it just so happened that, if I'm going to credit it to anything, God has given me the opportunity to discover that purpose over the last few weeks. Last year, I ran this race. It was my first 100-mile run, and I finished in a pretty respectable time, but I didn't get what I thought I would out of the race. I crossed the finish line feeling empty, feeling as though I had just endured something hard, but that it didn't have much meaning. There wasn't much meaning to accompany the efforts and the investment that I had put forth. And what I've realized is that purpose and intention can't be fabricated. It must originate as a thought, and then it has to grow from the roots of the ground, and it takes time, and it's not pretty. And it made me think about a Tupac Shakur poem that's pretty popular, I think, at least because I thought about it. And it says, "Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete, proving nature's law is wrong? It learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared." We all have that rose, and a lot of times it's buried beneath the concrete. And so many go their entire lives without allowing that rose to see the light of day. And a big part of what I want this journey to be is really deep diving into what I believe my purpose is. I know that my purpose is rooted, whether it be beneath the concrete or not, in the idea of a steadfast approach to life. And I hope to be able to not only exemplify that steadfast approach in the moments that lie ahead in this race, but to be able to really provide lessons and applications for people to be able to apply it to their own lives, to be able to resonate with that word steadfast, and to know that through that approach they can do great things and serve an amazing purpose. I feel like the self-serving life, doing something for yourself, it's always the most accessible option. It's the easy choice, surrounded by a world of possibilities that mean a lot more than just serving yourself. But you have to be able to open your heart and your mind to those realities, to the opportunities that surround you. And a lot of times we bury our head in the work. We bury our head in our daily struggles, and we don't look around to see all of the people that we have the opportunity to influence. And that's what I love about ultra marathoning. You know, if you go out and sign up for a half marathon or a marathon, it's a race against the clock. You don't have a support system on the course with you because a lot of times you'll see them in a few hours anyways. An ultra marathon, you want that support during the race. And something that I want to make a point to do in this year's edition of the Rocky Raccoon is I want to look up and I want to look around and I want to see the people that are there for me. Tonight, the night before the race, I want to be with the people that are here to support and to be a part of this journey, because truly that's the most special part of it. When I think about last year's race, the things that stick with me the most important memories I have are actually rooted in the moments that I was with other people, whether it be at an aid station, receiving support, having conversation, whether it be running with my pacers in the latter half of the race. Those are the moments that I remember the most, because those are the moments that are the most important to me, the most aligned with my values. And that is what I want my heart to be open to tomorrow. I want it to be open to the people, and I want it to be open to a purpose beyond simply me just running for a goal time in a race. Because this race, it will be about more than myself. It is more than 100 miles. It's more than a race. It's life. Last year I posted the day before the race, we're going to live a lifetime in a day, and sometimes it feels like that's what 100 miles is. You are feeling every bit of that. You are embracing those emotions, those feelings, physical, mental, emotional, and it really is representative of life. And that's what we get to open our hearts up to. Because anyone with an ego can endure the rigors of an ultramarathon. I know because I have. But only those who know why they're doing it will run a truly beautiful race. One that represents the strength of humanity and not just the strength of their own personality. I'm running this race for a friend. I'm running this race for someone that I never had the opportunity to meet, but that I feel the strength of their presence. I feel how beautiful of a life they lived in such a short amount of time. I run this race for a friend named Sydney Petty. Sydney is the late wife to my friend and an athlete who I've coached in the last year, fortunately, because it built our friendship, Joseph Petty. From what I've heard and from what I've seen of Sydney's life, she was faithful, strong, kind-hearted, caring, and hardworking. To all that were blessed to know her, you knew that she was amazing. She was a devoted wife to her husband, Joseph, and an incredible mom to their son, Zeke. She was a daughter, sister, an aunt, and a pediatric ICU nurse practitioner. She was an incredible friend to many, and she was the type of person that you know you would have been lucky to have been in her presence, to have felt what a true loving personality is. I could tell that she would do anything for anyone, and she was ready to give a helping hand, as nurses often are, as I know from my girlfriend Abby. She would offer words of encouragement, and she would always share her love with the world. I heard that to know Sydney was to truly love her. And if you didn't know Sydney, as I wish I could have known her better, but if you didn't know her, this is her story. Sydney and Joseph got married in 2020, and they were blessed to become pregnant in 2022. They welcomed their son Zeke, on September 24th, 2022. And it was the happiest day of their lives. But 2 days later, their joy quickly became shock and despair when Sydney was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Last fall, Sydney underwent treatment, And then in spring 2023, she had a bone marrow transplant. This past year was extremely tough and filled with countless appointments, hard news, and hospitalizations. In August of 2023, around the time that I had met Joseph and was fortunate enough to begin building a friendship through coaching, they finally heard the words that they had been hoping and praying for. Sydney was in remission. However, in facing recent complications over the past few months, Sydney discovered that the cancer was back and was unfortunately extremely aggressive. Despite the physical and emotional trials facing her, Sydney remained steadfast in her conviction to be the best mother, wife, and servant of God that she could be. On Thursday, January 25th, Sydney Petty passed away. She is now free of pain and suffering and has undoubtedly found her eternal home with God in heaven. In her final days, she said, "Without fear or reservation, my salvation is rooted in God, and I know where I'm going. It will be okay." Tomorrow we will run 100 miles in her honor. We will exemplify the virtues she displayed in her daily life, and in doing so, raise money to support the family that she left behind. Please consider donating through the link in my bio, through the show notes, and through any means that you can. Support this family that has lost an amazing person far too soon. There's a quote that I came across that I felt like was a beautiful way to tie all of this up, and it says, "Faith makes all things possible. Love makes all things easy." And Sydney surely had both of those two things. So I mentioned we would revisit the idea of why we're back in Huntsville, Texas for the same race. And I've been asked this question a lot over the past few weeks as I've trained. Why did you come back? You've already run this race. You could find another race to run. And I understood that, but I crossed the finish line last year and it just didn't feel right in reflecting on that experience. In the moment, it felt like what you would expect. I was pretty tired, pretty broken down, and just really ecstatic to be done running on that day. But really, when you reflect on an experience like that, you can't fake whether you got everything out of it that you should have. And I do feel like I left a lot of things on the table, not necessarily physically, but I felt like mentally and emotionally I was not as present as I could have been in that moment. And presence is a really important value that I want to be able to put on display and to embrace and lean into in this life. Because if you don't have presence, you're constantly searching for the next thing. You are not in the moment. And it's really easy in an ultra marathon when you're running for hours on end throughout the course of a day or more. It's easy to not be present. And that's one of the greatest challenges that we face in these moments is, can you remain present? Even when it might be more beneficial to almost check out mentally. Can you stay there a little bit longer? Can you continue to push forward? And I knew that I didn't show up as my best, most authentic self 12 months ago. And I am also a creature of habit. I will admit that. And it's just a little bit more comfortable for me to come back to literally the same Airbnb and the same race course and the same time of year, which is where we're currently at. But I also know, and it was affirmed in going to the bib pickup this morning and looking around, that I'm supposed to be back here. I'm supposed to be back in this moment, and I'm supposed to show to myself, above all else, that I'm better than what I was last year, and I'm going to continue to be better from this experience as well. So that's why we're back. We're back to endure some hardship, but we're back to really put that steadfast approach on full display, and to do it with an amazing crew of people. I'm truly ecstatic by the people who are here for this race. I'm ecstatic that we're not limited to just the race alone, that we can celebrate this race in the coming days, and we can bond over this experience, this hardship. I've had so many moments in the last 12 months of my life that I've gotten to build relationships build upon past relationships, current relationships, through hard things, through people volunteering to endure hardship. And that's what we're doing. But that word volunteer, too, is something important worth going back to, because I signed up for this race. With every step tomorrow, I'm, in a way, signing up for this race again. I'm choosing to do this to myself. And a really important message that I hope I've been able to share in the past, and I want to continue to share, is that this is not suffering. This is far different than the suffering that people can experience on a daily basis when they don't get to choose the circumstances of their lives, when they don't know the end date or the finish line of the challenges that they're facing. Something that I sign up for will never truly be suffering, and I'll never view it as such. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be easy. But for me to try to put out some message that I am suffering through a choice of my own, I don't buy into that. And I hope that that shines through as well in how I handle this race experience and in the messaging that we're able to put out during this race. We're doing this to, in a way, highlight the virtues of the people who do endure hardship that they did not choose, something that can actually be labeled as suffering, because people do have to go through that in their lives, and they're able to bring forth values and virtues that, in a way, we're just imitating through these experiences. And so through that, we can find a state of peace and comfort in the struggle that we endure, because there's a finish line. Sure, it's going to feel like you're kind of lost in the middle of the race at some point. You're ready for it to be over. You'd rather be doing something else. But would you really? Because when I signed up for this race 4 or 5 months ago, I knew where I wanted to be on February 3rd. And if that means I'm still there February 4th, it's what I wanted. And pain doesn't change that. Pain, if anything, magnifies what you want. If I'm willing to feel that pain, to continue to persist through that pain, that must mean I really want it. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to feel that. I'm here to lean into that, not run from it. And I'm here to grow from that. That is a really important piece to this, because the last 12 months of my life have been the hardest 12 months of my life. There's been hardship. There's been things that I wouldn't have chosen for myself, and yet it was not on the scale of the story that I just told. It was not in any way to be compared to someone who must endure illness, who loses someone who's so pivotal in their lives. And to be able to put our struggles into perspective helps us to then maximize the moments that we're in, to remain present in those moments, because we know we are strong enough. Our humanity was built to overcome these trials, to remain steadfast under those trials. On the outside, that feeling, that pain that we experience, it can be meaningless. But there's also the opportunity to apply that meaning to the experience, to embrace that meaning. There's a quote from Viktor Frankl, and it reads, "In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment that it finds a meaning." And I think that when we have the opportunity to discover a purpose, to find a meaning, it allows us to unassign that pain that we're feeling, to disassociate from that pain, and instead to associate with the purpose that comes out of that pain, the opportunities that we can really put forth to serve others in this life. Our only hope in these moments is that our ability to endure these trials, these hardships, and to do so in a steadfast manner can prepare us for life's true challenges, the things that can unexpectedly come our way. And at the same time, if we can provide encouragement to those who need it, to those who need support because they're dealing with something that for us might be unimaginable, we can, in a way, show how to handle those moments and at the same time learn more about ourselves. So when life does truly test us, when we truly must put our head down in the face of challenges, we are able to do so. This race is not to prove how tough I am. I don't do this as a full-time job. I don't do this because I expect to win the race. I do this because I truly love it. I love the person that it helps me to become, and I love how it makes me feel. about life, about the world, about the people that I get to associate with in the world. And that belief, in many ways, that feeling has been tested in recent months. I've gone back to a career field that I was in before I really got into running, before I got into signing up to run a marathon or much longer in the case of 100 miles. And I've learned that if you want to pursue a passion, if you want to do what you love every single day, many times it comes at a cost. It comes at the expense of additional time, energy, money. I've woken up many, many days, if not most days, at 5 a.m. and been outside on a cold, dark track, running repeats at an assigned distance. It's not sexy, doesn't feel very good, and you get to work and you still don't feel very good, but I never doubted for a moment that I loved this. And to show up to a race feeling prepared, feeling like I earned the opportunity to be on that start line tomorrow, it's a humbling thing, because you know that if you didn't truly love it, if you didn't have the conviction that you wanted to be out there tomorrow, you wouldn't have been here. It would have been easier to not be here. And yet here we are, and I've been extremely blessed to discover purpose in addition to that, to have a reason to be here and a message to share. Because as I said, it's not to prove how tough I am, it's to empower each person to embrace all aspects of their humanity, to lean into their own opportunities, and to handle each impending challenge with a calm confidence, knowing that you are strong enough to overcome it. And better yet, not just to overcome it, but to make it mean something, to make it matter. Told the story about Sydney Petty, and I'll now tell the story about how I met Joseph, Sydney's husband. He asked me to coach him for the Dallas Marathon that he ran at the beginning of December, and he reached out over the summer, probably June or July, and Joseph was one of the first people to believe in me as a coach. I believe he was my second athlete ever. And we were able to not only build a friendship over the course of that training cycle, but also to, get him in really good shape to run a sub 4-hour marathon, which he did. And I'll never forget the image of him crossing the finish line, FaceTiming Sydney, who was in the hospital at the time, as he crossed the finish line of the Dallas Marathon. And to think about how much that probably meant for him to be empowered by that opportunity to cross the finish line, knowing how much work as a father and someone who works a full-time job, how much work it took to get to that finish line, especially at such a challenging time of his own life. And those challenges were really revealed and evident to me over the past few weeks. And I'm fortunate enough that Joseph's not just someone who I've coached now. He's a very good friend, and I'm ecstatic to say the least that he will actually be at the race tomorrow. Never met him in person, and I'm really excited. I know when he comes to the race and I see him for the first time, it'll probably be mid-afternoon. I'll be pretty deep into the race, and I know that's going to be a jolt of energy that I need, because his family and the way that he's handled these past few months of his life, and the memory of his wife Sydney will be with me every single mile of tomorrow. It is something that I don't take lightly to try to tell this story, to do my best to put into words how much someone like Sydney could have meant to the people around her. And I can't do it justice. But when you see the power of the effect that she had, it's something that is meaningful and also encouraging. To me, it encourages me to want to have a similar impact on those around me. And what if it's only a few people? Well, if it's only a few people, you are having such a large impact on those few people in your life. I think we live in such an age now where everyone wants to have a widespread impact. We want to reach thousands upon thousands of people, and we forget about the amount of value that we can give to that one person who's right in front of us. And that's the encouragement for me. Let's have immense value for the person that sits right in front of us, for the person to our left and to our right. Lend a helping hand. Provide a word of encouragement. Spread love. Spread a message that maybe God has sent to you. That's the opportunity that we have. That's purpose. Purpose is not trying to go out and win a race. Purpose is not trying to be stronger than I was last year. It's not even to try to run faster than I did last year. It's deeper than that. And I believe that ultramarathons, the opportunity to endure that voluntary hardship, it's very representative of life. Even if just for a day, it's an opportunity to feel discomfort and to maximize it. So that's what lies before us tomorrow. A 100-mile ultramarathon and an opportunity to, as best we can, tell an important story of an amazing person. As I've already mentioned, if you've listened this far, I would love for you to donate. If you're listening on the morning of February 3rd, follow along on social media, on my Instagram, to see the progress of the race and to also hopefully hear aspects of Sydney's story. And just support that family. Support Joseph. Support their child, Zeke. And let's all strive for the impact that Sydney had on those around her. Because, like I said, I was never fortunate enough to meet her in person, but I can tell the power that it held. So let's strive for that in our own lives. Let's serve others before ourselves. And under those challenges that we're facing on a daily basis, let's remain steadfast. See you at the finish line.